This lecture is not so much about reproducible research per se, but it's more about how you can communicate your results in a way that people can understand them and can check your results if they need to. So particularly when you're doing a large data analysis or a complex kind of project, and you do your work in a reproducible manner, you're going to generate a lot of content and a lot of files and a lot of output and a lot of data, and those all cannot be presented at once. And so when you present your kind of findings to another person, you're gonna have there's a kind of hierarchy of information that you're gonna want to present, ranging from kind of the least specific to most specific. So the bottom line is that most people are these days are very busy. People like managers and organization leaders are going to be very busy, and so they are going to have to kind of accept content that you present at a kind of in a kind of hierarchical manner. So the idea is that in many times when you present a data analysis, it will be in an oral form like a presentation or in a meeting, but often the kind of early results or intermediate results are presented via a medium like email. And it's so useful to break down the results of an analysis into kind of different levels of specificity or granularity. And so here's a link to just some general advice on kind of how to get email responses from busy people. But the basic idea is that you don't want to kind of blast a ton of information to someone in one go, because it'll be overwhelming and people will be less likely to read what you have to say. So if you think about what a typical research paper might look like, there's a hierarchy of information built into a research paper. So typically the first level is going to be the title, which is descriptive of what the paper is about. Hopefully it's interesting and tells you a little bit of what's going on, but there's really no detail in a title, just to kind of the topic that's covered. The next will be the abstract, which will usually be a couple hundred words about what the paper is about, what motivated the problem, what they did to solve the problem, what the kind of the bottom line results were. So that's going to be in the abstract. Then, of course, you have the paper itself. The body of the paper will show you. You'll have the methods, more details about what you really did. There'll be the more detailed results, any sensitivity analyses, things like that will be in the paper, and a much longer discussion of the implications of the results. But of course, even the written paper these days for a complex data analysis doesn't specify really all the details that need to be that are needed to reproduce the findings. So then you typically might have some supplementary materials, which have a lot more of the details about what was done. And then if you really, really want to kind of do what was done to a level of precision that is kind of useful, you probably need to get the code, the data, and all the gory details of kind of what happened. So that's kind of like the range of things that you might be able to present, from least specific to most specific. Not everyone's course is going to be writing a research paper, but there is an analog to kind of most presentations of data analyses. And so if you're going to be emailing results to a person, either a colleague or a manager, then the first line of information is the subject of the email, right? So the subject of the email is kind of like the title, and you want to have it kind of concise. You want to be descriptive, and at a minimum, you want to have one, all right? So don't send an email without a subject, so it's not specific as to what the email is about. If you can summarize kind of what you've done in one sentence, then it may be useful to put that in the subject. And that way people reading the subject can kind of get a sense of what's happening and maybe even make a decision based on that alone. The next level of information, of course, is the email body. And you don't want to go, even though there's no technical limit on the size of the email body, you don't want to go too crazy with this. But you want to provide a brief description of the problem. Maybe if someone doesn't, if the person may not remember, if they're working on many different things at once, they may not remember what the problem is precisely that you're working on. So give them a little context, give them a little description. Recall, if there was a meeting previously, talk about what was proposed and what you actually did. Summarize some of your findings and your results, and maybe for a total of 1 to 2 paragraphs. This whole the email body. If you need the person that you're presenting the information to take some sort of action based on the results of this presentation, then you should try to suggest some options that and make them as concrete as possible, right? So, and if there are questions that need to be addressed, if you want them to kind of come back with an answer, it's usually best to try to make them yes/no questions, or as simple as possible. After the email body, of course, you might be able to attach something that's quite a bit longer, a PDF file or another type of document. And so this can be like a report containing more detailed analyses, figures, tables, things like that. This can be derived from an R Markdown file. You can use it, this can be something that you create with Knitter. But of course, even in a report like this, where you may be allowed, a couple of pages to present things, you still want to stay concise. You don't want to spit out pages and pages of code and tables and results. We know that your code is available because if you use something like Knitter, then you have to kind of put the code in with the results, but you don't necessarily have to present it all in the report. Your opportunity to do something like that, of course, will be if someone really wants to look at what you did precisely, you can give them a link to some sort of repository like GitHub or a project website that will have all of the details of all your code files, all your data sets, all the nitty gritty like that, all your software environment, things like that. And so that's kind of the different levels of detail that you might want to present to someone. And so people who are truly interested in everything that you did, or really want to know kind of the details, they might go to your GitHub repository and start pulling your code and start looking at it and looking at the detailed results. But someone who wants kind of top line, or I should say, top line summaries, they'll read the email, they'll look at the subject, they'll read the brief description, and might flip through the report. And so the point is that different people are going to be interested in different levels of detail about what you've done, and so you want to present people with those different levels so that they might be able to choose the level that they are most interested in. And so this is just a kind of a generic template for kind of how you might present an analysis or a data or a project that you've worked on. Not every presentation will kind of need all these different levels, but I think that I find this to be a useful breakdown of the different types of presentations that you can make.